All right, so critical race theory has been the big culture war issue that conservatives have been focusing on for the last couple months now. I guess it's been a long fucking time, at least it feels like they have been focusing on this. And the interesting about this discussion is that none of the conservatives that I've seen talking about critical race theory have actually any idea what critical race theory even is. And they talk about it through this weird lens where everything is seen as an attack on America. It's seen as an attack on them as an individual who identifies as a patriotic American, and that the entire history of the United States is just one filled with racism, and therefore that every single American alive today, especially white ones, should feel guilt and should be bowing down and kissing the feet of every minority that they see on the streets. This is basically how conservatives see critical race theory. It's not in line with reality at all, but that's how they talk about it. And so I have a clip here from Laura Ingraham's show on Fox News where she was commenting on General Milley, who's part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He basically did this interview, and I'm going to show you this clip because he's basically just talking about why he thinks that it actually is important to teach critical race theory and other lens of analyses within these military academies. And she just absolutely lost her shit and freaked out and ended up doing a sort of reverse horseshoe where, as a conservative, she swung so far to the right that she ended up on the leftist position of defunding the military. So first, let's just go ahead and hear what General Mark Milley had to say about critical race theory and it being taught in these military academies, and then we'll jump to Laura Ingraham's take on this.
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university, and it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were three-quarters of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look it, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets. But I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military.
Okay, so, I mean, listen, for a general, honestly, for a United States general with the very low bar that I would expect him to have on an issue like this, he kind of actually understands it a lot better than many conservatives do, at least a lot better than Laura Ingraham does. So I'm just going to read from the Wikipedia entry here on critical race theory, just to give you a very, very rudimentary and basic understanding of what this idea is. So critical race theory is an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States who seek to critically examine the law as it intersects with issues of race and to challenge mainstream liberal approaches to racial justice. Critical race theory examines social, cultural, and legal issues as they relate to race and racism. So literally just a lens of analysis whereby you can analyze systemic racism, whether it's in our institutions, our systems, etc. throughout history. So it really just should not be anything controversial. You're just talking about doing a lens of analysis in order to study things. You're not even talking about like making declarative statements or making moral prescriptions about the United States or about conservatives or about any of this. So this entire idea that conservatives have in their heads that it's like a direct attack on them and their heritage or whatever the fuck, it's just completely out of left field. They don't know what critical race theory actually is. And I think the reason why a lot of them have a lot of problems with this is because it's analyzing it from a systemic and institutional perspective, and conservatives cannot break that mindset of individualism. Everything in the United States, around the world, in our capitalist system has to be analyzed only through the lens of individualism, and that's the idea that they push in order to push this idea that the United States is a meritocratic system, that everybody is on an even playing field, and if you just work hard enough, you can make it to the top. All of that is obviously not true, and it ignores all of the systemic factors incentives that are at play that prevent certain people or give other people an advantage under our system. But that's something that they don't want to talk about. That's something that they can't talk about because, again, their entire ideology relies on this individualist mindset. And so, of course, they would reject something like critical race theory that seeks to analyze systems and institutions. It seems like it's pretty obvious why conservatives are struggling with this. And so here's Laura Ingraham finally freaking out about this and actually coming to the leftist position that we should defund the military because of what he just said.
We are sending our tax dollars to this military to an attempt to weed out so-called extremists, which just means conservative evangelical, as far as I can tell. We're paying for that? Why is Congress not saying we're not going to give you a penny until all of this is eradicated from the military budget? Nothing. This is my offer to you. Nothing. That's what I would say. I am totally outraged by him and his ridiculous response today. Sorry, Congressman.
Yeah, outraged, just over that very mild statement that General Milley just put out there. But whatever. I mean, listen, she's arriving at the right conclusion, right? We should be defunding our military, obviously not for the reason that she just gave, which is an entirely fabricated bullshit reason that she's using to justify angering her audience and trying to feed into this continued narrative that critical race theory is something that it's not. But she is actually right about defunding the Pentagon, which is something that we absolutely should do. Why? Well, I think we should do it for principled reasons, for actual substantive policy reasons. Well, why bombs in America, why bombs made in America have been killing civilians in Yemen? Well, because our bombs that are manufactured here by the Raytheons, the Boeings, the all of these other weapons manufacturers that the U.S. government works with to produce these weapons, they are profiting off of endless suffering and death and casualties of civilians overseas. So that's why I think that we should defund the Pentagon budget, which again is already larger than however many the next 8 countries combined, most of which are our allies. The United States spends more than any other country in the world by far. The second biggest is China, which is about like a third or less of our military spending per year. So it's absolutely ridiculous what we're spending on our military. These are the types of reasons why we should actually be defunding our military budget and our national security budget. The CIA is running death squads in Afghanistan. So again, these are the types of things: war crimes, endless warfare for resources, etc. These are the types of reasons why we should actually be reducing our military footprint, our military budget. And then for a third reason, and probably the biggest one, the Pentagon has never passed an audit. The Pentagon, the thing that is taking up the largest share of our entire budget, our discretionary budget, the military, cannot pass an audit. So not only are we dumping all of this money in that is then being going and used to wage war against civilians overseas and massacring hundreds of thousands, if not millions, over the course of the U.S. empire, they can't even pass an audit in addition to that. So not only is your money going towards things that are destroying infrastructure, civilians, populations, governments overseas, but in addition to that, they can't even tell us what the fuck they're actually spending it on. So these are the reasons why I support defunding the military budget. I'm glad that she ended up on the right conclusion, but of course it was for entirely fabricated bullshit reasons. But again, I mean, this just plays into the same idea. Republicans and conservatives in general have absolutely no idea what critical race theory is, and they're using this just as a pure distraction. That's all it is. All these little panels that they put together on Fox News every single night when Tucker Carlson comes out, Sean Hannity comes out and they complain about it, or Newsmax or OAN talking about it. All of these things are just, it's made up fabricated bullshit culture war issues to distract from the substance. And in this case, it's even going so far as to say we should defund the military because they're not being indoctrinated enough, or because our military members are being taught about basics of U.S. history. So, this is where the Conservative Party is at. It's an absolute joke. All of this is, again, just a distraction from the actual issues, because Republicans can't win on the issues because they support the worst and most horrific aspects of our political system here in the United States. And so they instead distract with these weird cultural issues that will get their base fired up by saying, critical race theory is an attack on you and your family's heritage, when in reality it's just the fact that they don't want to address the systemic racism within our institutions that still exist to this day.